Picture two different people, right? Both of them are standing at the exact same starting line of just absolute total despair.
Oh, like a complete rock bottom situation.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They've both just had the rug completely pulled out from under them. So let's say it's a sudden, devastating layoff from a career they spent, I don't know, 2 decades building.
Right. So their identity is just shattered.
Totally shattered. They've lost their money. Their sense of security is entirely gone. And they are stranded in this psychological space that they just do not recognize at all.
It's terrifying. Just a completely blank slate, but in the worst way possible.
Right. Now, the first person looks at this devastation, gets knocked completely to the floor, but then they make this highly deliberate choice. They actively master their mindset.
Okay, so they pivot.
Yeah, they look at the rubble and decide, to view it as the foundation for something totally new. And step by step, they rebuild, ultimately achieving a level of autonomy and success that is just wildly beyond their original corporate dreams.
Which is incredible.
Yeah.
But then there's the second person.
Exactly the second person. They are handed the exact same circumstances, the exact same severance package, the exact same opportunity for monumental growth. But they actively self-sabotage.
Oh, wow. So they just reject the opportunity.
Literally, they are offered a chance to start the business they always talked about or take a risky but exciting new role, and they actively decline it.
Wait, really? They just say no?
They just say no. They choose to stay trapped in a highly comfortable, familiar state of misery. They take a lesser job they absolutely hate just to recreate the feeling of their old cage.
That is just wild.
And they stay there for decades. Why? Simply because they're absolutely terrified of succeeding. So here is the question we have to answer today. Why is human neurology wired to treat our greatest successes and opportunities as fatal threats, actively sabotaging us right when we are on the verge of getting exactly what we want?
You observe this pattern in human behavior, and you just feel this immediate, genuine curiosity about the biological absurdity of it all.
It really is absurd, isn't it?
It totally is. Because consciously, we articulate that we are wired to seek happiness, right?
Right.
We want fulfillment and freedom.
Right, that's what everyone says they want.
Yeah, but then when we are faced with the actual tangible prospect of achieving those things, our central nervous system just hits the brakes. We literally construct our own prisons.
We treat the open door like a predator.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It forces us to ask what is happening on a physiological and psychological level that makes our own stagnation entirely self-imposed.
Well, getting to the bottom of that self-sabotage is exactly what we are doing today. Together, we are going to outline exactly what you are going to gain from this deep dive into the psychology of self-sabotage.
And there's a lot to unpack here.
Oh, definitely. First, you are going to walk away with the ability to identify the hidden, sneaky ways you might be actively avoiding your own potential right now.
Because it's rarely obvious, right? It usually feels like you're just being practical.
Exactly. Second, we are going to give you a highly practical framework for reframing not just the fear of failure, but the much more insidious fear of success.
Which is the real killer.
100%. And third, you are going to get the psychological tools to build a success mindset. The kind of mindset that turns terrifying, disruptive changes into literal stepping stones.
Oh, I love that. Turning the fear into fuel, basically.
Right. And if you want more deep dives like this, hit subscribe. We are constantly exploring these mechanisms, and subscribing is really the best way to continuously train your mindset right alongside us.
So to get to the root of this issue, it really requires us to fundamentally discard how we typically define fear.
Okay, how so?
Well, we tend to think of fear strictly as a response to danger, right? Like a predator in the brush or a car swerving into our lane.
Yeah, a physical threat to our survival.
Exactly. But in the context of personal development and human neurology, fear is actually a response to unfamiliarity. It is a response to change, even when that change is objectively positive.
That makes so much sense.
Yeah.
So let's introduce this core psychological concept here, the paradox of the fear of failure.
Right, because it sounds so straightforward on the surface.
It does. We're afraid to fail, so we don't try. But the mechanics underneath that are so much deeper. I want to move away from the cliche idea that our brains are just like outdated computers.
Yeah, that metaphor is a bit tired.
Right. Think instead about a deep-sea diver. When a diver is at the bottom of the ocean, the physical pressure is immense, but over time, the body actually acclimatizes to that exact depth.
Because the nitrogen dissolves into their tissues, right?
Exactly. They reach a state of equilibrium in the darkness. Now, if that diver suddenly rockets to the surface, to the sunlight, to the open air, to the quote-unquote success of being out of the crushing depths, what happens?
Well, the rapid change in pressure causes the nitrogen to form bubbles in their bloodstream. They get the bends.
Right. It is excruciating, and it can be fatal. The body violently rejects the sudden positive change in environment because it happened way too fast.
That is a phenomenal way to visualize what the nervous system goes through, because your neurology does the exact same thing with sudden success or opportunity.
It induces the psychological bends.
Exactly. You have acclimatized to the high-pressure, low-light environment of your current struggle. You know how to survive on a tight budget. You know how to navigate a toxic boss.
You know how to manage the dull ache of an unfulfilled life.
Right. Your body has established a baseline of homeostasis there.
Yeah.
And homeostasis isn't about being happy, It's about being regulated.
It's just predictability.
Exactly. It is your biology's way of saying, well, we survived yesterday by doing X, so we must do X today to survive.
So when you are suddenly handed the promotion or you finally sit down to write the novel you've been dreaming of, you are rocketing to the surface and the brain freaks out.
Precisely. Because the amygdala, that's the brain's threat detection center, it does not have a distinct categorization system for good change versus bad change.
Wait, really? It can't tell the difference?
Not at a base level, no. It only categorizes familiar and unfamiliar. When you step into a wildly successful new paradigm, your sympathetic nervous system activates.
So your heart rate increases, your pupils dilate, all that.
Yeah, cortisol and adrenaline are released into your bloodstream. Biologically, the physiological arousal of immense excitement is almost identical to the physiological arousal of impending doom.
Oh, wow. So your conscious mind says, we are getting everything we wanted. But your subconscious, ancient biology says, the environment has changed. We are in unmapped territory. Retreat to safety immediately.
100%. Which brings us to how this actually plays out in real life.
Right. And to do that, we are going to look at one of the most brilliant psychological contrasts in modern literature. This isn't just a clinical theory, right? It is the beating heart of The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho.
Which is such a perfect text for this.
It really is. Now, we are assuming most of you listening are familiar with the basic fable structure here. We have our protagonist, Santiago, a young shepherd from Spain who crosses into North Africa chasing a recurring dream of treasure.
Right, the classic hero's journey.
Exactly. But we aren't going to get bogged down in a chronological plot summary today. Instead, we are going to extract the hidden psychological subtext of what happens to him.
Because it maps perfectly onto the modern psychology of self-sabotage we just discussed.
Exactly. So where does this really kick off for him?
The critical moment for our analysis begins the moment Santiago arrives in Tangier. He doesn't speak the language, he is completely out of his element, and within hours, he is robbed of every single cent he owns.
Just absolutely cleaned out.
Yeah. He is sitting in an empty marketplace as the sun sets, completely ruined.
He is at the exact starting line of absolute despair we talked about in our opening scenario. He is at the bottom of the ocean.
Right. And he's faced with a choice right then and there.
He could easily adopt the identity of the victim, He could let his amygdala take over, retreat to bitterness, and find psychological safety in anger.
Which is what most people would do.
Yeah, but he makes a conscious pivot. He reframes the empty marketplace not as a strange, terrifying place, but as a blank canvas. He chooses the mindset of an adventurer.
And that adaptability leads him up a large hill right to the doorstep of a crystal shop, which sets up the ultimate case study in self-sabotage.
Right, because we meet the crystal merchant, and he serves as the perfect foil to Santiago's adaptability.
Totally. The merchant has been stuck in the exact same spot, running a shop at the top of a steep, hilly street for 30 years.
30 years? Just let that sink in.
And the city of Tangier has drastically changed around him. The bustling port moved, the foot traffic died, and his business has slowly withered away.
Yet he just stayed there, entirely paralyzed by his fear of change.
Exactly. 30 years of predictable disappointment. He has acclimatized to the bottom of the ocean.
And as Santiago starts working for him, we uncover what I like to call the Mecca Paradox.
Oh, this part is so fascinating.
It really is. The merchant reveals that his ultimate lifelong dream is to make the pilgrimage to Mecca. It is the fifth obligation of his faith. It is the core pillar of his personal aspirations.
So the obvious question then becomes, well, why hasn't he gone?
Right.
And the merchant states very clearly that he has the money. He has watched thousands of poor pilgrims pass his shop on their way to Mecca over the decades.
So it's not a resource issue at all.
Not at all. He has the resources, he has the deep, burning desire, but he outright refuses to take the trip.
His reasoning is where the psychology gets incredibly dark and honestly incredibly relatable.
It really hits home.
He tells Santiago that the thought of Mecca is the only thing keeping him alive. It is the only thing that helps him tolerate his miserable days. You know, the dusty, silent crystals, the same horrible meals at the same cafe.
He admits that he is terrified to actually realize his dream.
Yeah, because he fears that once he does, he will have absolutely no reason to go on living afterward. He literally says, I'm afraid that it would all be a disappointment, so I prefer just to dream about it.
That is the fantasy defense mechanism at its absolute peak. He is using his dream not as a geographic destination, but as a psychological anesthetic.
Wow. A psychological anesthetic. That is a heavy phrase.
But it's true. We have to look at the neurochemical reward system here. Dopamine is not just the chemical of reward. It is the chemical of anticipation.
Okay, break that down for us.
Well, Robert Sapolsky, the neuroendocrinologist, has done fascinating work showing that dopamine spikes the highest during the anticipation of a reward, not necessarily the acquisition of it.
So the merchant is getting a massive dopamine hit just by standing in his dusty shop, looking out the window and imagining the pilgrimage.
Yes. The fantasy provides a safe, controlled drip of dopamine without any of the environmental risks of actually traveling across the desert.
So it's all the neurochemical reward with none of the actual risks.
Exactly. If he achieves the dream, that anticipatory loop is completely destroyed. He is forced to face the messy, unpredictable reality of the present moment, where there is no future hit of guaranteed dopamine waiting for him.
That makes total sense.
Furthermore, his entire identity is wrapped up in being the man dreaming of Mecca. If he goes, that identity is obliterated. Who is he the day after he returns?
He would have to forge an entirely new identity.
Right, which requires a massive expenditure of cognitive energy that his acclimatized brain just refuses to spend.
Let's translate this directly to you, the listener. What is your Mecca? What is the dream you are using as an anesthetic to numb the pain of a mediocre reality?
Is it writing a book? Is it starting your own consulting business?
Or is it finally leaving a toxic relationship? Are you keeping it as a pure fantasy? Because if you actually try and fail, or more terrifyingly, if you try and succeed, your entire identity has to change.
The concept of identity foreclosure is critical here. We lock on to a specific identity because it is socially and psychologically safe.
Right, like the person who always talks about their potential but never acts on it.
Exactly. If you are the aspiring writer who talks about your novel at coffee shops but never actually finishes a draft, you are protected from the market.
You are protected from one-star reviews.
You are protected from discovering that your best effort might not actually be good enough.
Or conversely, you are protected from the terrifying reality that your book becomes a bestseller.
Right. The fear of success again.
Exactly. Because if you succeed, now you have deadlines, a publisher, an audience with massive expectations, and you can no longer be the underdog. Your old identity has to die for the new one to be born.
And that identity death is what the body is trying to avoid when it triggers the self-sabotage reflex.
Yeah.
It prefers the familiar ache of unfulfilled potential to the sharp vulnerability of stepping into the arena.
Yeah.
But wait, I actually need to push back on this framing for a second.
Oh, go for it.
It is incredibly easy for us to sit here and psychoanalyze the merchant, right? Calling his practical decisions a defense mechanism or identity foreclosure.
Sure.
But the man is a physical storefront in a bustling port city. He has overhead. He has inventory. When Santiago suggests building an outdoor display case to attract customers, the merchant resists. But isn't taking risks totally unrealistic when you have actual financial obligations like rent to pay?
That is a very fair point.
Right. The merchant says, you and I have to live with our mistakes. If the crystal is fragile and a donkey kicks that display case, the merchant loses his livelihood. We can't just slap the label of self-sabotage onto basic, rational, financial risk assessment. That feels incredibly privileged. Not everyone is a wandering teenage shepherd with zero dependence who can afford to just throw caution to the wind.
I understand where that defense comes from. I really do. But we have to separate genuine financial ruin from the psychological inflation of risk.
Okay, what do you mean by inflation of risk?
Well, Santiago's approach is absolutely not about reckless, uncalculated gambles. He doesn't tell the merchant to liquidate the shop, buy a camel, and walk blindly into the Sahara.
That's true. He doesn't do that.
Right. First, he suggests cleaning the glasses in the window. That costs literally nothing. Then he suggests the display case. It's an incremental step. And when that works, Santiago suggests selling mint tea in the crystal glasses to the thirsty people climbing the hill.
The mint tea was a stroke of genius.
Exactly. But let's look at the actual capital outlay for that. It's just hot water and mint leaves. The merchant's resistance isn't about the cost of the mint leaves.
Right. It's not really about the money.
No. He is taking a microscopic financial risk and inflating it in his mind to catastrophic proportions. Like, oh, a donkey might smash my entire livelihood. He does that just to justify his stasis.
Okay, yeah, that is the crux of it right there. The inflation of risk.
Exactly.
The brain will manufacture extreme worst-case scenarios to justify remaining in homeostasis. It uses the language of pragmatism, the rent, the economy, the fragility of the crystal to mask a deep biological terror of expansion.
The danger isn't paying your rent. The danger is using your rent as an intellectual shield to ignore the clear signs that your current environment is suffocating you.
That's a powerful way to put it.
And look what happens when they finally start selling the mint tea. The shop explodes with success. The merchant has to hire more employees. And in the midst of this overwhelming success, the merchant makes a profound admission.
Oh, this line always gets me.
Right. He says, every blessing ignored becomes a curse. When you are shown your immense possibilities, when you see what you are truly capable of, but you refuse to act on them out of a manufactured fear of risk, your comfort zone stops being a sanctuary and becomes a psychological prison.
Every blessing ignored becomes a curse. That honestly merits a deep dive in itself.
Let's do it. What does that mean to you?
Well, we often think of missed opportunities as neutral events, right? A door opened, we didn't walk through it, the door closed, and we remained exactly where we were.
No harm, no foul.
Exactly. But human psychology does not work like a ledger with a zero balance. The potential you refuse to actualize actually ferments. It turns into a highly acidic form of resentment.
Cognitive dissonance enters the chat.
Exactly the mechanism. You hold two conflicting beliefs. Belief A, I am capable of achieving my Mecca. Belief B, I am actively choosing to stay in this dusty shop.
And the friction between those two realities causes immense psychological distress. It's agonizing. So to resolve that dissonance, you either have to take the terrifying action, or you have to twist your worldview to justify your cowardice.
You become cynical. You start believing the world is rigged.
Right. The merchant realizes that because Santiago showed him what was possible with just a little bit of mint tea, he can no longer pretend to be happily ignorant. The blessing of awareness unacted upon curses him with chronic dissatisfaction.
We see this exact fermentation of unactualized potential in another character earlier in Santiago's journey too, which opens up a whole new layer of why we sabotage ourselves.
Oh, are you talking about the baker?
Yes, exactly. Before Santiago even crosses into Africa, he meets an old king in the town of Tarifa. And the king points out a baker in the town plaza.
Right, I remember this.
The king explains that when this baker was a child, he wanted to travel, just like Santiago. But the baker decided to buy a bakery first, put some money aside, and then when he was an old man, he would finally spend a month in Africa.
The sociological conditioning behind the baker's choice is staggering there.
It really is. Because the king explicitly states the rationale. He says, bakers are more important people than shepherds. Bakers have homes, while shepherds sleep out in the open. Parents would rather see their children marry bakers than shepherds.
So he just caved to peer pressure, basically.
Essentially, yeah. The baker surrendered his true desire, what the book calls his personal legend, in exchange for societal prestige tokens.
We really have to unpack the history of those prestige tokens.
Yeah.
Because the transition from agrarian societies to the Industrial Revolution fundamentally changed how human beings calculated risk and reward.
How so?
Well, we moved from a world where survival depended on adaptability to a world where survival depended on specializing in a predictable, institutionalized role.
Right.
Baker became a title of security. It meant a roof, a predictable income, and social standing. And the crazy thing is, we still do this today.
Oh, absolutely.
Think about how many people go to law school, not because they possess a burning passion for jurisprudence, but because lawyer is a recognized prestige token that buys the approval of their parents and society.
They are essentially buying psychological safety at the cost of authentic living.
Exactly.
The tragedy of the deferred dream is really a surrender to the external locus of control.
Okay, define locus of control for us.
In psychology, Locus of control refers to how much agency you believe you have over your life. Someone with an internal locus of control believes their actions dictate their outcomes.
Like Santiago.
Right. But someone with an external locus of control believes society, fate, or authority figures dictate their outcomes. The baker submitted to the external locus. He decided that the collective opinion of the town square was more valid than his own internal compass.
And as the king notes, what people think about shepherds and bakers eventually becomes more important to them than their own destinies.
It's just tragic.
It is, and it's another massive pillar of self-sabotage. We build these elaborate lives that look incredibly successful on the outside. You know, the bakery, the mortgage, the respect of the community.
But on the inside, we are suffocating.
We are starving for the travel, the adventure, the authentic life we abandon in the name of looking responsible.
Which brings us to the linguistic and philosophical anchor of the book, the Arabic word maktub.
Right. It loosely translates to, it is written.
Yeah. And the contrast between how the crystal merchant uses it and how Santiago learns to use it perfectly illustrates the difference between an external and internal locus of control.
Let's break that down, because the merchant uses Maktub completely passively.
Right. It is his ultimate excuse for stagnation.
Exactly. When he refuses to go to Mecca, or when he initially resists the display case, his underlying philosophy is basically, it is written that I will stay in this shop. It is written that I will never reach my goals.
He uses fate as a cosmic permission slip to do absolutely nothing.
It's such a cop-out.
It is. He is living in what the existentialist philosopher Jean-Paul Sartre would call bad faith. Pretending he has no agency over his choices just to avoid the anxiety of freedom.
Santiago, however, realizes that Maktub is active. The path is written, the universe has a design, but that design requires your active, courageous participation. The universe presents the omens, it presents the opportunities, the mint tea, the display case, the caravan across the desert, but you have to take the physical steps.
Which reframes that famous line from the book, right?
Which line?
When you want something, all the universe conspires in helping you to achieve it. It is so often misinterpreted as passive manifestation.
Oh yeah, like just sit on your couch, want it really badly, and the universe will deliver it.
Exactly, like a cosmic vending machine. But the text demands action. The universe only conspires to help you while you are in motion.
Before we look at how Santiago's motion breaks him out of this trap, I want to pause and turn this directly to you listening. Drop a comment below right now. Have you ever self-sabotaged an opportunity because you were just too comfortable?
Oh, that's a tough question to answer, honestly.
It is, but it's important. Have you ever had a Mecca that you kept safely on a shelf? Or a bakery you bought just to look good to your family, while entirely ignoring your true calling? Be painfully honest in the comments. And if you want to read The Alchemist or listen to the full audiobook, the link is in the description below.
Right, and getting back to that active Maktub, Santiago actually puts that into practice when we see the ultimate test of his mindset.
After a year of working in the crystal shop, right?
Yes. He has completely revolutionized the business. He has made the merchant wealthy, and he has earned enough money to buy double the flock of sheep he originally lost.
So he has reached a new equilibrium, a new homeostasis.
Exactly. He is at the surface, breathing the air. He could easily go back to Spain, claim a massive victory over his initial tragedy, and live safely as a wealthy shepherd.
He has basically built a highly comfortable new cage.
And the merchant even recognizes this. The merchant tells him, you know that I'm not going to go to Mecca, just as you know that you're not going to buy your sheep.
Oh, wow. So the merchant is projecting.
Big time. The merchant, projecting his own passive Maktub mindset, just assumes Santiago will succumb to the exact same fear of the next level.
But Santiago recognizes that Tangier is no longer a strange city. He conquered it. He learned the language of the merchants, but more importantly, he learned the language of the world.
The language of enthusiasm, of things accomplished with love and purpose.
Exactly. He realizes that if he could adapt and conquer this completely foreign environment, he possesses the internal architecture to conquer the desert.
So he chooses to induce the psychological bends again.
Which is wild.
It is. He voluntarily leaves the new comfort zone. He walks away from the money, the security of the crystal shop, and joins a caravan to cross the Sahara toward the pyramids.
He proves that leaning into change, rather than hiding from it to protect your ego or your comfort, yields exponential rewards.
Right. He didn't just get his money back. He gained a profound understanding of how the world works and how to trust his own resilience. Synthesizing everything we have unpacked today, from the neurobiology to the literature, I think 3 core principles really emerge about mastering your mindset and overcoming the fear of your own potential.
Let's hear them.
First, action is the absolute only cure for fear. You cannot think your way out of a biological threat response.
That is so true.
Waiting until you feel ready guarantees you will wait for 30 years like the crystal merchant. You will never feel perfectly calmly ready to disrupt your life because your nervous system is literally designed to protest disruption.
So you have to take the micro action.
Exactly. Clean the glasses first, build the display case next. Action forces the brain to process new data and realize the environment is actually safe.
That's brilliant. Second, do not let your ultimate goal become a mere fantasy that you use to tolerate a miserable present.
The dopamine trap.
Right. If your dream is just a dopamine painkiller for your current reality, you are misusing your own ambition. Your dream should be a geographic coordinate you are actively walking toward, taking on the dirt and the blisters of the journey.
Not just a pristine TV show you watch in your head to escape your daily life.
Exactly.
And third, you must recognize that rejecting growth doesn't actually keep you safe. The illusion of safety in the comfort zone is a mathematical fallacy.
How do you mean?
Rejecting growth just turns your ignored blessings into a psychological burden. The universe, or your environment, or the market will keep presenting you with opportunities to evolve. Ignoring them doesn't maintain the status quo.
It creates a compounding debt of cognitive dissonance.
Exactly. And that dissonance will eventually become far more painful than taking the risk ever would have been.
Which brings us all the way back to the question we asked at the very beginning of this deep dive. Why do our brains actively sabotage our success right when we are on the verge of getting what we want?
The million-dollar question.
Right. And based on the physiological mechanics and the philosophical realities we've explored, the answer is remarkably clear. Our brains sabotage us because achieving our dreams demands that we completely abandon our old familiar identities.
The identity death.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The crystal merchant's brain associated safety with the dusty, stagnant shop, and it associated death with the unknown reality of actually reaching Mecca. We sabotage success because our biology is wired to prefer familiar discomfort over the terrifying, ego-destroying vulnerability of true fulfillment.
Wow.
Success requires the death of who you used to be. You have to grieve the struggling version of yourself to become the successful version. And that grief, that transition, is inherently terrifying.
It is terrifying because it asks you to step into a void where you don't know the rules yet. But as Santiago learns, stepping into that void is the only way to truly live.
It's the only way.
It is the only way to discover what you are actually capable of. Which leaves us with a final thought for you to sit with today. If the universe truly is conspiring to help you, what is the display case you are refusing to build today? And what will it cost your soul if you leave it unbuilt for the next 30 years?
That is a powerful question. If this deep dive gave you one idea worth keeping, one physiological insight or perspective shift that made you think differently about your own self-sabotage, hit the like button. It tells us we're on the right track and helps other people find this content.
And we release a new deep dive every week. A different set of ideas, books, and studies designed to challenge your cognitive biases and train your mindset. Subscribe so the next one comes to you automatically.
And if this discussion made you want to actually read The Alchemist or experience the full audiobook for yourself, the link is in the description. If you grab it through our link, it directly supports the show at no extra cost to you, and we genuinely appreciate every single one of you who does. Until next time, keep building those display cases.